I performed a heart transplant without Gary and his beloved knowing. While everyone thought I was already dead, I was lying on a peaceful beach island, leisurely soaking up the sun. Until one day, Gary discovered that my urn was filled with powdered milk. Oops, things took a wrong turn. Chapter 1. When I was 7 years old, I first discovered that I had immortality. My alcoholic father, after drinking too much, repeatedly smashed empty bottles on my head until the glass shattered and scattered all over the floor. I could vividly feel the blood in my body slowly draining, leaving me trembling with cold. But just when I thought I was about to pass away, a warm surge filled my entire being, reviving my body in the face of life and death. So when Gwen asked me to give her my heart, I nodded without hesitation. It's just a heart, after all. Since I can't die anyway and I can save a life, why not? I lay on the cold operating table, feeling the anesthesia slowly taking effect, my consciousness gradually becoming hazy. But at that moment, the first person that came to my mind was Gary. I met him when I was 18, working at a bar. After my father died, I had to work part-time during school breaks to make ends meet. In order to save enough for living expenses, I ended up as a waitress at the bar. Although it was a place filled with all sorts of people, the wages were high, making it the only job that could help me save enough before summer break ended. That night, Gary was heavily intoxicated, and the first thing he said when he saw me was, "I want to take care of you." I nodded and agreed without hesitation. My decisive response surprised everyone present, including Gary. No one can resist money, especially when the person offering to take care of me is young, handsome, and wealthy. From any perspective, it seemed like I had scored a great deal. That night, he took me to a luxurious penthouse in the city center. It was a house so big that I had only seen it on TV. Unable to contain my curiosity, I looked around, but this seemingly inconspicuous action caused Gary to furrow his brow. "What's your name?" he asked. "Hope." "Hope, that's quite a unique name." I pretended to blush and smiled, trying my best to play the role of a kept woman. "Give me your account number. I will regularly deposit money into this account, and I will notify you in advance before I come. There's a housekeeper here during the day, so if you need anything, just ask the housekeeper. I like piano music. You'll need to take 2 piano lessons per week, and after a month, I will come to assess your progress. If it's not satisfactory, our deal will end," he stated each requirement methodically. Having a big house to live in, not worrying about tuition or living expenses, and even having free piano lessons, I felt like I had hit the jackpot. I promised Gary right away that I wouldn't disappoint him. Before leaving, he glanced at me a few more times, but his gaze seemed to be looking through me at someone else. But I didn't mind any of that. And so, I followed Gary for 3 years, from the age of 18 to 24, watching the balance in my account grow. Gradually, thoughts of escaping death began to form in my mind. After all, my dream had always been to live carefree and achieve great success. Now that I had achieved success, the only thing missing was a carefree life. Just as I was contemplating whether it should be a car accident, drowning, or jumping off a building, Gary's beloved returned. Chapter 2. On the first night with Gary, I knew that I was just a substitute, someone to fill the void in his heart. So, all along, I did everything in my power to satisfy my benefactor, even to the extent of extracting more wealth from him, and I wholeheartedly dedicated myself to learning about the person who occupied his thoughts. After 6 years with Gary, almost everyone in our circle knew of my existence. So, as soon as Gwen returned, I received messages mocking me. Counterfeit goods will always be counterfeit goods. Now that the real deal is back, let's see how you handle it. Stealing someone's love for so long, how shameless. I shrugged my shoulders as I read the messages. What could I do? I could only lie by the poolside of the luxurious villa, enjoying the fresh fruits flown in for the season and sipping on the $1,000,000 wines from Gary's collection. Oh, and I could also take helicopter rides along the special routes I applied for, enjoying the breathtaking landscapes of our beautiful country. In winter, I could soak in private hot springs and go skiing at private ski resorts. That's all I could do. But the thought of leaving all this behind soon made me feel a bit reluctant. Without hesitation, I opened my phone and indulged in some extravagant spending. Before leaving, I couldn't neglect myself. Looking at the never-ending shopping orders, my mood improved significantly. Just as I was preparing to enjoy the big bed all by myself tonight, I heard the sound of the door opening, followed by Gary changing his shoes. I glanced at my phone and saw that it was only 6:30. I was surprised because the love of my life, whom I had been longing for all these years, had returned early. Why was he home so soon? We should have had a chance to catch up, chat, have dinner, and drink. Stop. Don't think about it anymore. Not everyone has the same dirty thoughts as me. I sighed, composed myself, and went to greet him. But to my surprise, I saw Gary holding a familiar box in his hands. Hope, how many times have I told you not to have these things delivered to the company's address? In the box was a black sheer lace nightgown. Do you like it? I asked, raising my head. Gary sighed, seemingly helpless, and said, I do. I curled my lips. What use is liking it? In Gary's heart, Gwen will always come first. In the following days, I rarely saw Gary's presence. I was relieved, no longer needing to speculate about his thoughts. For the sake of my own happiness in the second half of my life, I began secretly transferring the money I had acquired from Gary over the past few years. After this birthday, I can finally leave, I murmured. There was just half a month left until my birthday. Since I met Gary, he had celebrated my birthday with me every year. I hoped he would accompany me for one last birthday. Chapter 3. On the day Gary returned, I fell asleep on the couch while binge-watching a TV series and feeling tired. I was awakened by a strong smell of alcohol. Opening my eyes, I found myself being held in Gary's arms, unexpectedly meeting his bloodshot eyes. For some reason, my hands slowly reached up to touch his eyes. Have you been busy lately? Yeah, there's a tricky matter I need to resolve. Once it's taken care of, I won't be busy anymore and can spend more time with you. I obediently nodded, suppressing my curiosity and refraining from asking about the matter. All right, you go back to sleep, I'll handle some things. Alone on the soft bed, I couldn't find any trace of sleepiness. Gary's exhausted image kept appearing in my mind, and I couldn't resist getting off the bed. I walked to the kitchen and made a cup of honey water for him. But when I reached the entrance to his study, I hesitated. Was this something I could do? In those few minutes of hesitation, I overheard Gary's conversation with someone else. I can pay any amount. Gwen's health can't wait any longer. I know, finding a compatible heart is so difficult. So, he was so busy because he was trying to find a heart for Gwen. I turned around, holding the cup of honey water, and went downstairs to the kitchen. I poured it all down the drain as if nothing had happened, then climbed back into bed to sleep. When I woke up, there were traces of someone having slept beside me. I reached out to touch, but there was no warmth left, indicating that it had been a while since they had left. When Gary returned in the evening, he still reeked of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot. Is this trouble difficult to resolve? Gary buried his head in the crook of my neck and softly murmured, yeah. I sighed and gently patted his back. Chapter 4. I sent a WeChat message to the person who had mocked me, asking which hospital Gwen was in. It was a private hospital, and Gary was the majority shareholder. He had arranged for Gwen to be in his own hospital. When I saw Gwen, I was taken aback. She was ravaged by illness, barely recognizable. Her body was thin, her eyes sunken, giving her a somewhat frightening appearance. She was equally surprised to see me. You look a lot like the old me. Is that so? But now, I look more like the old you than you do. Gwen clearly didn't expect me to say such a thing. She had a moment of confusion before finally smiling at me after a while. I shrugged, teasing a sick person wasn't very amusing. I just had a compatibility test with you. Gwen furrowed her brow. Compatibility test? Yes. For a heart transplant. Her brow furrowed even tighter. If it's successful, I'll give you my heart. The hospital where Gwen was staying was established by Gary when he learned about her congenital heart disease. For many years, he had dedicated himself to researching congenital heart diseases. In just a few years, the techniques he had mastered were among the best in the world. But all of this was for the person lying in that hospital bed. In a private hospital like this, I could apply for a compatibility test if I wanted to. After saying those words, I turned and left the ward. Let Gwen figure it out on her own. The compatibility test results came out quickly, and they were a perfect match, as if they were tailor-made for Gwen. I furrowed my brow, feeling a sense of dissatisfaction deep within. Tonight, Gary's brow was no longer furrowed, and he didn't have the scent of alcohol on him. His eyes were gleaming as he looked at me. He rushed over and hugged me, saying, "Hope, tonight I can be with you." A self-deprecating smile flashed across my face as I stiffly reached out and patted his back, agreeing with the response. In truth, if he delved a little deeper, he should have known that the person who went for the compatibility test was me. But he was too happy, knowing that his Gwen would live. "Is everything settled with the company?" I pushed him away, looking at him face to face. Inside, I hoped that maybe he would tell me the truth, but he didn't. "Yeah. It's resolved. I can finally spend quality time with you." "Okay." I gave Gary one last chance, but he still didn't speak the truth. Later, I went to the hospital again and obtained Gwen's contact information. "Why did you want to give me your heart?" "Because I don't want to live anymore." This reason obviously was difficult for Gwen to believe. So, I randomly came up with another reason: "I'm also sick and don't have much time left. I thought I could do a good deed for myself before I die." I smiled at her half-believing, half-doubtful expression and left. She wants to live, so she won't tell Gary. She doesn't dare to gamble. Chapter 5. Despite the successful compatibility test, I am still a lively and vibrant person, and Gwen still doesn't have my heart. But since I agreed, I will honor my commitment. That day, I asked Gwen's attending physician about her current condition. If a suitable heart isn't found, she can only live for another month at most. So, I gave myself half a month to properly say goodbye to Gary. "My birthday is in a week. You've been so busy lately, you haven't had the chance to spend quality time with me," I murmured, lying on Gary's back, burying my head in his neck. He put down his work, sighed helplessly, and held onto my wrist. "Do you want anything as a gift?" I took the opportunity to sit on his lap and continued grumbling, "I can use your card to buy anything I like." Suddenly, I remembered something Gwen's friend had told me. Gary had once bought an entire bay and proposed to Gwen right after her graduation. That competitive spirit within me suddenly surged. What if I want a ring? I wrapped my arms around Gary's neck, looking into his eyes, and said softly. The air suddenly became quiet, with only the sound of our breathing and my heart beating faster involuntarily. Thump, thump. In this quiet space, it became especially apparent. To prevent the awkward atmosphere from lingering, I raised a smile and said, "I'm only 24. I haven't had enough fun yet. I'm not ready for marriage." "Hope, you're very sensible." "Yes, 6 years, and all I received was a "you're very sensible." "Hope, what exactly were you expecting?" When I left the study, I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears welling up inside me. But clearly, I failed. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Even though I possessed immortality, making me a little monster, I am still capable of loving someone. Gary is capable of loving someone too, just not me. The next day, I received the gift that Gary had sent, almost filling up the entire living room. As I looked down at all these things from the staircase, I instantly felt calm. Between him and me, it was nothing more than a transaction of money. In Gary's eyes, I was just a plaything who would obey him as long as he paid. It was a mutual exchange of needs, and it was my greed that got the best of me. Once I had this realization, I suddenly felt enlightened. I rushed down the stairs in my slippers and began unpacking the boxes, not wanting to let anything go to waste. If I liked something, I would keep it. If I didn't, I would return it and exchange it for cash. These were all guarantees for my future happiness. With this in mind, my motivation grew stronger. In no time, I sorted everything and skillfully made a call to a luxury item recycling service. As I looked at the money coming into my account, the discomfort I felt last night had long dissipated. No one can have a problem with money, especially someone like me who used to fear poverty. After surveying the half-empty living room, I made another phone call. "Hey, Tori, come over quickly." Tori was my childhood friend and the only person who knew my secret. In no time, the living room was filled with a tall and slender beauty. Same old rule, pick what you like, and send the rest to the usual place. I winked at Tori. Tori skillfully gave me a thumbs up and started picking and choosing. The usual place was the happy home I had prepared for myself after my escape, known only to me and Tori. "When are you planning to leave?" "I want to prepare in advance." For the sake of my escape plan, Tori had transferred from a public hospital to Gary's private hospital 2 years ago. "It's coming soon, after my birthday." "Okay." After Tori left, I took out my phone and sent Gary a WeChat message, "Love you so much." I attached a photo of the unpacked gifts that I had taken beforehand. In no time, Gary replied, "As long as you're happy." Chapter 6. On the evening before my birthday, Gary didn't come back. There was no need to guess, he had gone to Gwen's place. I sat on the swing on the balcony and lit a cigarette under the moonlight. Only when Gary wasn't around could I be myself. I was never like Gwen, a refined lady skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. After pretending to be her for 6 years, I was truly fed up. I raised my hand and made a gesture as if playing the piano in the air, then chuckled. I picked up the nearby glass and finished the 6-figure worth of liquor that Gary had left, then stumbled and fell onto the bed. "Baby, happy birthday." The first birthday wish I received that day was from Tori. After replying with a kiss emoji, I got out of bed to freshen up. Today was my birthday, but it was also the day I would say goodbye to Gary. Of course, I had to dress up nicely. "Are you preparing a surprise for me tonight?" I sent Gary a message on my phone. "Of course, wait for my notification tonight." He replied almost instantly. I was genuinely curious about what kind of surprise it would be. So, after getting myself ready, I sat on the couch in the living room, waiting for Gary's so-called notification. Until nightfall. I turned to look at the takeout on the table, worth 5 figures, which I had already devoured. No one should ever compromise themselves. While waiting for him, I ordered some takeout that I was craving and got excited while placing the order. But after placing the order, I realized that I was about to leave soon, and having it delivered here meant I wouldn't get to enjoy it. And so, I had another moment of being emo. Why hasn't he come back yet? I glanced at the time, it was already 10 in the evening. If he didn't come back soon, my birthday would pass. No response to my messages, no answer to my calls. Forget it, I won't wait anymore. I ordered another birthday cake, although it wasn't custom-made, but it would do. After eating a slice of cake, I called Tori. "Get ready. TSK, your sugar daddy is still with Gwen." I already figured that out. "I'm coming over." After hanging up the phone, I left the villa in the coolest sports car from the garage. There weren't many vehicles on the highway at this time of night, and I embraced the fresh evening breeze, welcoming the new beginning. To ensure that everything went according to plan, I headed towards Gary's private hospital, planning to die in a car accident. But plans don't always go as expected. I was driving peacefully when suddenly a large truck crashed into the back of my car. With a loud bang, everything around me seemed to go silent. So, a car accident doesn't hurt at all. That was my first thought. I felt like someone was pulling me out of the mangled vehicle. Then they frantically began administering first aid. "Hold on, just a little longer." Sweat dripped onto my face, warm against my skin. At that moment, I had only one thought in my mind. "Stop saving me, please stop. If you really bring me back to life, my plan to escape death will be ruined." Perhaps my prayers worked because I felt my body getting lighter and lighter, until my soul drifted in midair. I saw the young man who was giving me first aid, still refusing to give up. "I'm sorry." An ambulance arrived, sirens blaring, and it was Gary's hospital. I watched as they lifted my body onto a stretcher and rushed me to the hospital. I followed my lifeless body into the ambulance. In front of the operating room, I saw a doctor holding the organ donation agreement with my name on it. He said, "This young lady who died in a car accident is a perfect match for Gwen's heart. We can immediately arrange for the transplantation surgery." I could clearly see the immense joy on Gary's face. It was already past midnight. On my birthday, I bid farewell to Gary forever. Chapter 7. I wanted to see how Gary would react after knowing the truth, so I continued floating in midair, unwilling to return to my body. Gwen's surgery was a great success. After receiving this news, it seemed like Gary finally remembered me and called me on his phone. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. I saw him furrow his brows, knowing that he probably thought I was throwing a tantrum again. But this time, I really wasn't. Then he walked straight into Gwen's hospital room and sat beside her, waiting for her to wake up. It was at this moment that Tori burst into the room and slapped Gary hard. We had planned this beforehand, for the sake of the authenticity of the situation. Gary was clearly stunned by the slap. "Hey, saving your first love with Hope's heart, you beast." Tori, with red eyes, uttered these words passionately, and then took my body and left the hospital. Gary still hadn't fully comprehended what had happened and stood there in a daze. After a while, he finally stood up and grabbed Gwen's attending physician. "The person who was brought in from the car accident tonight, what's their name?" Gary struggled to say. "It's a friend of Dr. Jen. I heard Dr. Jen mention her name as Hope. Such a pity, I heard today is her birthday." The doctor shook his head as he spoke. Gary stood there, stunned for a while, then suddenly clutched his stomach and bent over, vomiting. How could it be her? She was waiting for me at home to celebrate her birthday. "She's only 24, doctors, why didn't you save her?" I heard Gary screaming hysterically, running towards the operating room as if he had gone mad. The doctor, seeing his state, had to call security to restrain him, and then administered a sedative. But all of this no longer affected me. I floated away from the hospital. "If you don't go in now, your body will start to decompose," Tori said in exasperation to the empty air. I watched as Tori efficiently cremated me within a short night. Now, even if Gary comes, he can only see your urn. "So, what's inside the urn?" "Milk powder." "Oh." I reached out and touched my chest. The newly grown heart was beating with even more strength. "Go, go, go. Is your luggage ready? Take off now, quickly." "You go ahead, I'll tie up loose ends and join you soon." That night, I hit the road and arrived in the country that had been arranged early on. Chapter 8. I don't know what happened to Gary afterwards. Perhaps he did love me, but now that he has Gwen, he probably already cast me aside. As for me, I've been thriving overseas. I got accepted into a prestigious university and am pursuing art. My mentor praises me as a once-in-a-century genius. It seems that I'm not just a little monster, but a genius as well. I lit a cigarette and slowly took a drag, with my final project in front of me. "Do you have a light?" a young man standing next to me asked. I casually took out a lighter and handed it to him. "Thanks." And so, the two of us stood and sat by the lake for several hours. Before leaving, he said, "I'm Fred. I think I've seen you on the lake bridge 2 years ago." It was him, the one who kept saving me. "You've mistaken me for someone else," I smiled. He pointed to his earlobe, where there was a light red mole. "I noticed it when I was feeling your carotid artery pulse. I went to the hospital to inquire, and they all said you were dead. It was my first time trying to save someone, but I failed." At that moment, I thought, if I had tried a little harder, if I had learned more knowledge, would you still be alive? Fortunately, you're still alive. I looked at him, his face not quite clear in the sunset. "Thank you. I'm still alive, but now I have to leave with my final project," I smiled at him. "I'm Fred." He stood in front of me and asked, word by word, "Can you tell me your name?" I pointed to my chest and said, "I've been hurt here, so I can't easily tell others my name anymore." With that, I left without looking back. Just as one wave subsided, another rose. I had just returned when I received a call from Tori. In the end, she chose to stay in the country and pursue her career. "There's a big problem. Do you remember when we were supposed to bury that fake urn for you, and Gary absolutely refused? So, it ended up staying at my house all this time. Today, he suddenly came over and tried to snatch your urn. I definitely couldn't let him have it. But in the struggle, we accidentally scattered your ashes." Gary completely broke down at that moment, kneeling on the ground, gathering your ashes. And then, that milk powder is quite good. Even after all this time, it still has a strong milky fragrance. I'm screwed. Now it's me who's been triggered. I can't take it anymore. I had only just settled into a peaceful life after 2 years. Tori, after years of sisterhood, you absolutely cannot tell him where I am. It's too late, darling. He found out. Okay, I need to move overnight. Chapter 9. Recently, everything has been going haywire. I ran into Fred at a hotel. When I encountered him, I still had my final project on my back. Regardless of the situation, I couldn't afford to lose my final project. He didn't seem to notice my disheveled state and greeted me with a smile. We meet again. Aren't you curious about my name? I'm Holly. Hope, Holly? I fell silent. How did he even know my name? Come with me. I know there's someone you don't want to see, he said, pointing to my chest. Indeed, I hadn't cancelled my identification after my death. If Gary wanted to investigate, no matter how far I ran, he would find me. But right now, I really didn't want to see him. Okay. Maybe it was an impulsive decision, or perhaps it was instinctual trust towards someone who had desperately tried to save me. I followed him. My final project is due tomorrow at noon. I hesitated to speak. I'll have someone deliver it for you, Fred spoke up. The car drove up to an estate, a European-style castle with an intricately carved iron gate. It slowly opened, revealing a fountain nearly 3 meters high. The little person inside me clenched the handkerchief tightly. So what if there's one more wealthy person in this world? Gary won't find this place, Fred said. I looked at him skeptically and asked, why are you helping me? In an instant, a thought arose in my mind. Could he know the secret of my immortality and want to bring me here for secret experiments? Fred smiled at me and said, do you know what it means to follow your heart? I want to help you, so I did. I won't bother you for long. Once I figure things out, I'll leave. Okay. Chapter 10. According to Tori, after my fake death, Gary was devastated and publicly declared me as his wife. He didn't even visit Gwen after her surgery. When I heard that, I couldn't help but laugh. Where was he when it mattered? And now he's pretending to be all affectionate and disgustingly sweet towards me. My mentor called me and said that a man named Gary had come to the school looking for me. When he found out I wasn't there, he waited outside the school for several days. Luckily, I was quick to escape, or else he would have caught me. Don't move. I directed Fred's movements. He is now my personal body model. This all started on the day I accidentally caught a glimpse of him just after he had finished showering. At that moment, I was dumbfounded. Previously, I had only known how to appreciate a man's abs. But after studying art, I realized how shallow I used to be. The distribution and thickness of muscles play an important role in aesthetics. Surprised, I nodded and said, can you be my model? My inner thoughts were exposed, and I felt embarrassed. But Fred nodded. And just like that, he became my personal model. You're almost there. Your muscles are too perfect, I need some time to sculpt them. Okay, take your time. After a while, I signaled Fred that he could move freely, but I continued to focus on carving the details, keeping my head down. Tell him I'm not available. Fred answered a phone call, and his usually gentle tone suddenly turned icy, as if it could freeze. Then play along with him. Another sentence followed. Just as the words fell, my artwork was complete. I looked at the life-size sculpture in front of me and nodded in satisfaction. Finished. Fred hung up the phone and walked over to me. I nodded and then looked up at him, saying, it's a gift for you. For me? Fred said in surprise. Yes, for you. This is my first attempt at a life-size sculpture, and I think it turned out well. So, I want to give it to you. I knew that this statement could be interpreted ambiguously by him. But that was intentional. Fred remained silent for a long time and finally said something unrelated. Do you still love him? Now the one remaining silent was me. Of course, I don't love him. I have always been able to let go easily. Once I decide someone isn't worth it, I immediately move on. When Fred was almost unable to wait any longer, I finally spoke up. Where do you see any signs of me still loving him? Is it when we spend time together here day and night? Is it when we went diving together, and I willingly held your hand? Is it that time when you were sick, and in a daze, you leaned in to kiss me, and I didn't pull away? I smiled and asked him in return. Then, do you love me? Fred cautiously asked this question. I stood up from the couch and said to him, word by word, do you want me to continue listing? Love or not, you should be able to feel it. Chapter 11. Tori, I've fallen in love again. Silence fell on the other end of the phone. If Gary finds out, it will be a disaster. My lips twitched for a moment. Why bring up this troublesome matter on such a joyous day? What did he do to bother you? It's not that bad, he's just trying to find out where you are, wanting to see you. Why does he want to see me? To see me being affectionate with another man? It's annoying. I've already helped him bring someone back to life, and now he's thinking about someone else. Hope, avoiding the problem won't solve it. If you want to completely get rid of him, my suggestion is for you to meet him. After hanging up the phone, I rolled around on the plush blanket. Then I dialed that number. That night, I lay in Fred's arms, looking out through the floor-to-ceiling window at the fluffy snow falling outside. The fire in the fireplace burned brightly. Tomorrow, I'm going to meet him. Fred's hand, which was caressing my hair, paused for a moment. All right. It will probably be over by 4 in the afternoon. Can you come pick me up? I want to have the small cake you bought me last time. I'll do as you say. Once everything is resolved, you won't have to be so burdened anymore. I don't want him to disturb our life. I got up and knelt on Fred's lap, looking into his eyes as I spoke. On the third day, the entire city was covered in white snow. The meeting place I had chosen was a cafe near the school. What would you like to drink? When I arrived, Gary was already sitting here, waiting for a long time. Thanks, but I don't like coffee. Gary opened his mouth, then finally said, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Sorry for being together for 6 years and not even knowing what I like to drink? Seeing an old acquaintance, I inexplicably felt a bit annoyed. I casually took out a cigarette and lit it. When did you start smoking? Was it after you left me? I shook my head. I've always smoked. You weren't like this before. I sighed and said, I've always been like this, but you didn't know. You always wanted me to play the role of Gwen. A great pain appeared in Gary's eyes. Hope, I know you've given me many chances. Can you give me one last chance? Gary, that day was quite painful. The day of the car accident, it hurt a lot. I've given you 6 years of my youth, and you gave me what I wanted. Between us, it was originally a transactional relationship. I was the one who first indulged in something that didn't belong to me, so I paid the price. It's not about indulging, it's about me not seeing my own heart clearly. Hope, if you're willing to see me one more time, does that mean there's still a possibility between us? I glanced at my watch. It was almost time. There's no possibility. I came here to make you give up. After saying that, I got up and left. Pushing open the door of the cafe, the first thing I saw was the man standing under the streetlight. Snow had started falling from the sky again, lightly covering the man's body. In his hands, he held the cake from the shop that I wanted to have. A smile appeared on my face as I dashed towards him.